Welcome or welcome back to On This Date. And On This Date is a channel where I will discuss past and present murders, disappearances, or anything true crime. And today I want to talk about a case involving a beautiful 17-year-old girl named Brittanee Drexel. And as many teenagers like myself, we just wanted to go have fun and not know the true capabilities of the people that we walk by every single day, the monsters that are among us. And this was just a girl who wanted to escape home life. Um, as teenagers, we go through things, and Brittany was going through a couple things, and she just wanted to be like every other, I guess, kid her age and go on spring break that day. And unfortunately for her, that would be her first and her last spring break. Her mother would never get to see her bubbly, spunky self. Before we get into the tragic story of how Brittany Drexel disappeared and ultimately ended up murdered, I'd like you to first get to know Brittany. And Brittany was born on October 7th, 1991, in Rochester, New York, to parents Don Wagner and John Cagaglo. And I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. I believe it was a Turkish name that I seen, so I was pretty sure I was going to butcher it. Originally, Dawn and John, they were young parents, and John did abandon them. He ended up taking off and moving to Miami, where it left just Dawn and Brittany, so leaving Dawn as a single mother to Brittany at the time. It's unfortunate because Brittany's biological father does come back into her life about a year before her disappearance. And although this year was great for them and they got extremely close, he got close to her in that year, and I can only imagine now losing her again. And I'm not going to judge the situation on why her father chose to up and leave at that time. Um, some of us just can't handle that kind of pressure. And you know what? At the end of the day, at least he decided to step back in and try to be there for his daughter. And I'm at least happy for him that at the end of all of this, he got that little bit of time with her. Um, it doesn't make it probably any easier. I'm sure much harder. It's just so tragic, this story. And because of John's absence, um, Don would go on to remarry a man named Chad Drexel, who he would actually take on the fatherly role of adopting Brittany. So he would become legally her father. And Dawn and Chad end up having two other children too, so making Brittany a big sister, which she absolutely loved. And Brittany was an all around amazing and absolutely loved, just bubbly, happy young lady. She had beautiful, strikingly blue eyes, um, just absolutely beautiful, breathtaking. And her personality, everybody was drawn to her. And I seen an interview with Brittany's soccer coach, and he was, expressing how much sadness they felt and how much they wanted answers and to know where she was at. And when he wanted to tell a story to talk about Brittany, how she was in her personal life, for everyday life, he brought up an incident from back when he used to coach her for soccer. And this man fell apart. I mean, he was absolutely heartbroken, to the point that someone else that was sitting with them actually took over the interview for him, and then they kind of panned back to the coach. And very sad, and just shows you how much of an impression that Brittany had on everybody, including just coaches at her school. So through this time, as Brittany approaches her teenage years, she starts dating a boy named John. John would be a very important role in Brittany's life, and they became very close. And as Brittany would become around 17, Dawn and Chad actually do separate. So Chad ends up moving out of the family home. And so that kind of leaves Brittany feeling very like rebellious and not understanding probably what adults go through. And maybe it was the best, well, I'm sure it was, for the family. Still making it very hard, I'm sure, for Brittany. Um, also, I'm sure with the past with her own biological father and then now Chad, maybe she's just going through a lot of emotions. And her behavior, it kind of starts to change. She becomes more rebellious, skipping school. And before I get into this, I don't want to judge her. And I don't want anybody to judge her. She's a very young kid going through a lot and doesn't know how to filter it or get it out or what feels right or what feels wrong in a very hard time in her life. And through this, Brittany ends up overdosing on her mother's prescription medication, which she ends up finding and taking. And although we don't know if this was an attempt of her life or just a miscalculation of how much she took, maybe she just wanted to take some medicine and go to sleep and forget about what was going on. And I'm sure we've all been there, and I know I have. Um, Life can be stressful sometimes, and so we don't know what Brittany's thoughts were there. Um, she was very remorseful afterwards, and her mother and her dealt with that, and also her father, Chad. So as after this all kind of happens, obviously Dawn and Brittany are kind of like not on bad terms, but Dawn is wanting to kind of rein her in a little bit, right? Lay down some rules and things like that. So this kind of comes at a time where Brittany is wanting to go to spring break in South Carolina, Myrtle Beach. And Brittany asks Dawn if she can go, and Dawn tells her no. And the reason is she wasn't in a great headspace, and Dawn didn't probably feel like it'd be great. And I don't disagree with her. After what Brittany's kind of been going through and the emotional roller coaster, yeah, I would not want my daughter either. And going 14 hours away, that's hard anyways. But however, Dawn says no, and Brittany is very upset. And so a call from Dawn, her mom, is made to Chad, her father. And Chad's kind of asking her, like, what's going on? No, you're not going to this. Stop bothering your mother about it. And what your mother says goes, doing like the typical dad and trying to parent her from a separate household. Although they did live close, I pretty sure I end up seeing. Obviously, he's in a separate household. So to like a teenage girl, um, my parents were divorced. However, my mom wasn't much in my life. So when she was, it wasn't great. But you don't feel like they have much authority, right? If not really that my dad would do this because my mom really, it's a long story. However, maybe my dad says he's going to call my mom, but to me, I'm thinking as a teenager who's stubborn and who wants to go do what she wants and just being a teenager. Um, I'm going to be like, yeah, what's she going to do? She's not even in this house. So I think it was just a lot of Brittany didn't think anything was going to go wrong. What's the worst that can happen? She wants to go on spring break and wants to be like the other girls and friends at her school. And I guess this was like a big thing, a trip from Rochester to Myrtle Beach, um, kind of like a cheap teenager destination to vacation. Um, I heard it's not the greatest of areas, and I've read where the crime is very high. And I know there's beautiful parts to it, but definitely more of a seedier place. But with that comes cheaper. And for young um, teens or college age students, this is a perfect destination for them. All kids want to do is go hang out, do whatever they're going to do as kids, go to the beach, and they don't really care where they're sleeping. Whereas you or I might not want to sleep at the Motel 6. So kids are a lot different, and she didn't see any danger in it. However, Brittany was told that it was a no. So a couple days passed, I guess, and at this point, Brittany now is asking Dawn, could she go stay at a friend's house? And so I think Dawn wanting to trust her daughter because there really was no reason not to trust her. This was just new behavior. Brittany was a good kid up until this point. So I think Dawn not wanting to punish her fully either for just kind of going through emotions and having a rough time. When Brittany asked, could she sleep at a friend's house for part of that spring break, Dawn agreed. And I'm sure now looking at it, Dawn wishes she put her foot down. We've all been there. We have caved when we haven't, right? It's just part of being a mother. You pick your battles, right? And maybe she felt like, okay, she's not going to go to the beach, but I'll go ahead and let her go to a friend's house. What harm is that? This way, she's not feeling very trapped or like she can't do anything. Um, so I think that she just really trusted her and there was no reason not to trust her. So, me being a parent of a now 18-year-old, but 17 just a year ago, if I would have told her no about a trip and then she would have came to me asking to go to sleepover, I may be hesitant. But again, every child's different, every relationship's different. So again, who's to think something bad's going to happen, right? None of us expect this. We know it's there. Some of us don't know it's there, even the ones who know it there. We never expect it to happen to us. And especially being a teenager, I'm sure Brittany felt invincible. I remember being that age as well. So I completely understand. Um, Brittany's just wanting to go and not really listening. And then I also understand Dawn on saying, no to that trip and going ahead and giving her that little bit of space and freedom as well. So by that Thursday of April 24th, Brittany left and never to be seen again. And as she pulled out, she made her 14-hour trip to South Carolina, Myrtle Beach. And with this trip, she made it with 9 of her friends. And these 9 friends are Elena Lippa, Jennifer O'Bara, Phil O'Bara, Elena's brother, Olger, Jennifer's boyfriend, I believe, Louis D'Amigo, V. Nugent, Nick Chirico, Khalid Sinclair, and Anthony Humphreys. If I mispronounced any of them, I apologize. And their ages ranged about from 19 to 20. And they are all arrive in Myrtle Beach sometime that next day. And they're checking in at the Bar Harbor Motel on April 24th, 2009. So it would have been the 23rd Thursday, I guess, when they left. I'm sorry. And after checking into their hotel, they kind of get ready and they decide that they're going to go to this local club called Club Kryptonite. And this is where Brittany and her friends run into people that they know from Rochester as well. Now, Brittany only knows one of them out of the group, and that is Peter Branzenitz. Again, I'm probably butchering the names. Um, he's 20 years old, and Brittany is only familiar with him. Along with Peter is his friends Matthew Abrams, Anthony Shimizi, Philip Watson, and Keith Cummings. And she was unfamiliar with the rest of the group. So basically, she kind of like clung to Peter and hung out with him for the rest of the night. And they were at an 18 or older club. Now, Brittany wasn't 18, so obviously she snuck in or her fake ID or whatever. Um, I didn't understand that part, but I'm positive I read that it was an 18 and older. The club, however, is not there anymore. Like shortly after Britney's disappearance, I guess it closed down, and I'm wondering if they were letting 17 or even possibly younger than that in. Could that have been a reason? I don't know, but basically there was a VIP section, and Peter and Brittany ended up hanging out that whole night together. So the second day, on that Saturday, they end up going to the beach, and this was reported when people were saying Brittany and her friends that she came with were arguing, and kind of more like her friends were ganging up on her and causing an issue, like kind of bullying her. So I guess at some point, Brittany decides that she's done with it and she wants to just go back to her hotel room. And as she's walking, there's like a bunch of guys, I guess, kind of like hackling her and like hitting on her. And so she sees another male walking. And I guess she feels safe enough to like ask him to intervene and help and walk her back to the hotel. So they kind of think that she's with him and that they're not going to follow her. So he does just that. And he walks her all the way to her hotel. And as they get back to the hotel, for whatever reason, he decides to record her like on the bed, just sitting. And on the phone, she's texting, like she's being recorded, but she's texting, and she's texting her boyfriend, John, who is stayed back in Rochester, New York. John had work, so he did not go with Brittany. And again, I'm sure that it's very hard for him as well because had he gone, I feel like this would have went so much different. But again, it's only the actions of the people who actually committed the crime that are to blame, and the would have, should have, could have's just, it's probably really hard to let it go, but we will come to find out who's responsible for this crime. And they are the reason that Brittany is no longer here because they're monsters. However, he takes a picture or a video of her on the bed, and then they kind of go out to like the porch, like the deck area, and he takes another video of her. And this becomes important because it kind of gives a story um, as to when she disappears, what was going on. And he did turn over, once he realized that Brittany was missing, he did turn over that footage to police immediately. And for confidentiality, his identity has not been released. So on that Saturday, though, at some point at 2 p.m., Brittany talks to her mom, and Brittany tells her mom that she is at the beach. And now Dawn thinks she's at the beach at like a little lake spot off of Lake Ontario. Um, I guess like where the locals, or maybe they called it, the beach. I lived in an area where there was no beach for a while, and people used to call the lake with sand around it a beach. And I was very confused because I've been to the beach, and it wasn't the beach, but I get it. Locals like to call it that, and it's the beach to them, right? So Dawn thought that Brittany was at this beach, and this is because it was abnormally warm this day in Rochester, New York, and she didn't think anything of it. So they had a conversation, and everything was fine. And she never thought her daughter was 14 hours away. So after all of this, and Brittany getting walked back home from the male who took the videos, um, she decides that she needs to walk back to Peter's hotel, and they are staying at the Blue Water Resort. And this is when she walks back to Peter's, and it's because she left flip flops in his car, I guess, maybe earlier that night before. So she wants to walk back and go retrieve her flip flops. So at this point, at 8:15, Brittany is actually seen leaving her motel, the Bar Harbor Motel, on CCTV footage. And it tracks her till 8:35 and through multiple stoplights where you can see her texting again to John. And her and John were very, very close. And this will come into play here in a minute because John and her texted so, so much. She gave him a rundown of everything. And she was telling him how she was upset, about the girls and the fighting, and how she was excited to come back home, right? And Brittany didn't go like 30 minutes without replying, and neither did John. So when she's walking to this other hotel, she's obviously keeping in contact with John, and she's letting him know what she's doing, and um, everything is fine. So she arrives at the Blue Water Resort around 8:35, and Brittany stays for a few minutes, and this is later corroborated by Peter. And then Jennifer, one of the girls that she came with on the trip, starts blowing up her phone and yelling about a pair of shorts that Brittany was seen wearing. So Jennifer is saying she needs these shorts. She's going out, and she wants Brittany to immediately bring them back. And for whatever reason, these girls, like, to me, were cat. And again, this is my opinion. Um, I don't know. I just feel like they kind of like left Brittany out and didn't really care, and like calling her and at her and screaming about a pair of shorts. I don't know. Um, I just feel like they weren't really like true friends. I don't think I would ever do that to one of my friends when I was a teenager. Yeah, like I might get upset like if my friend borrowed my clothes and didn't bring them back, but yeah, I'm just not doing what her friends do and kind of do to her following. I just got the impression that maybe they're young, maybe they don't look at it this way, but I still feel like just the way they treated Brittany was not okay. So I don't know. So, anyways, as they're arguing on the phone, she ends up telling Peter she's leaving, and supposedly Peter asks her, and I'm supposedly because we don't know, and he asks her if she would like him to walk her back. And she says, "No, I've been walking the strip, I'll be fine." And so she heads out. And she is seen at 8:48 leaving the Blue Water Resort and heading back to her hotel. Now, the surveillance footage that captured her going the whole way there should have captured her on the whole way back, except that literal footage stops of her like moments, seconds later after she leaves. She doesn't even make it to the first, I believe, traffic cam. Um, and this whole time she's texting John again. And again, she's reiterating, like, I am sick of these girls and I just want to come home. And I can only imagine how Brittany's feeling because usually if you sneak out, right, you want it to be like, I guess, like magical in a way, right? Like, you want to do it, you shouldn't be doing it. So you want it to be everything and more, right? Like the risk and the reward idea. Um, so I feel like Brittany being Brittany, and even though she was going through the rebellious stage and what I could see about her, I feel like really wanted this trip to be something special and was like really like just heartbroken that these girls would treat her this way and then kind of probably upset with herself that she lied to her mom and now she's stuck dealing with these girls and she just wanted to get home and she missed her boyfriend and stuff like that. So I really do feel bad for Brittany as far as that. Like, even if she could go and then you think it's going to be so great and then you go with a bunch of friends and they end up treating you like this. Um, I don't know. It's just a horrible situation. And this poor girl, she just wanted to go to spring break. Like, out of everybody, I'm not saying one person or the other. It's just still so crazy to me that this girl from Rochester, New York, just running back a pair of shorts to a friend on a boardwalk, just goes missing, just snatched, just picked off the earth. And I don't understand it. Like, she wasn't supposed to be there. And it's just like, God, the odds of it happening, right? I just can't believe it. It makes me sick. And this case was something that I seen years ago on these investigation discovery disappeared. And Brittany Drexel's case came up, and I just was so intrigued and heartbroken. I like and sick because I just cannot imagine her fear and how scared she was. And we'll come to find out that unfortunately she met with a predator that wrong place, wrong time, and just being such a sweet, innocent girl, she just never seen it coming. And it just makes it more tragic. She was 17 with a whole life to live, and I'm sure she would have did amazing things. It's so tragic. So after John and Brittany's last text, about 30 minutes goes by, and John is immediately alarmed because this again is something that is unlike her. Um, they text all the time. So the fact that she now just stopped texting out of nowhere makes him nervous. So he starts blowing her phone up and she's still not responding. So at this point, he's like, you know what? I am going to call your mom then. Because John knew she was at the beach. You know, he's her boyfriend. And she was giving him a whole play-by-play, and he was completely fine with it. They seemed to have a pretty good relationship, and he had to work, and so she was able to go, and he was happy for her. Um, but as she didn't respond back, he knew there was something up. It wasn't like a controlling, "I'm calling your mom if you don't." I've been in a controlling relationship. This was not it. He was actually scared, and the intuition, he was exactly right, and he had every reason to believe and know something was wrong. So after he threatened to call her mom and tell her mom that she was at the beach, she never texted back, and he knew. So he did. He did. He called her mom, and he told her that he hasn't heard from Brittany. So of course they're blowing up the phone. And at this point, Dawn is trying to call Brittany's friends, which just don't answer her for whatever reason. But Dawn is 14 hours away. So she decides she is going to call a friend named John Hain. And this friend lives in North Carolina. So she asks John, could he please go to South Carolina and report Brittany missing at the Myrtle Beach Police Department? So he does. He makes it there, and by 4 a.m., the police were alerted of Brittany's disappearance. And this is when they head over to the Bar Harbor Motel where Brittany was staying with all her friends. And at this point, I don't even see why it was stated because, again, the friends don't really talk. Um, why they were staying at the Bar Harbor Motel, but then they just moved hotels to a boardwalk hotel. But they were under the impression that Brittany was coming back with these shorts. And then when Brittany didn't come back, like I don't understand the whole timeline there. Um, and then when Brittany didn't come back, they literally left all of Brittany's belongings just in this motel room. And I thought it was strange. Like, you don't bring your friends' belongings. And another reason why I'm saying these are not good friends. I would never do this. I wouldn't even let somebody do this. Like if I was with a group of people and she was like, "Oh, she's being a bitch. She has my shorts, and I'm not gonna take." I'd be like, "No, you're petty, and she's gonna lose all of her stuff, right?" But I don't know. These girls are built different, I guess. So they left the stuff, and the police spoke with them, and really nothing, right? They had nothing to say much where they were at. So their next lead was to go to Peter's hotel and the Blue Water Resort. And he comes to find out that Peter and all his friends have left at 1 a.m., just up abruptly took off and left. And now Dawn is wondering, like, what is going on? None of these people will answer my calls. I can't find my daughter. And the police report that there's like drugs in the hotel room left, and it looks like there was like partying going on. So now Dawn is concerned, like, did Brittany take something? Are they trying to cover up something? Do they have her held somewhere because they're scared? No one will talk to her. I mean, none of these people will answer. I know I would answer the phone for someone's mom. I get being scared, like, oh man, we're in trouble, but they're not in trouble. They were allowed to go to spring break. They're pretty much adults. And if you didn't do anything to her, like, I don't understand that. Just answer the phone. But anyways, they did not. And so after they see that Peter and they check out of the hotel, they Peter ends up going, they end up finding out that Peter and all his friends already headed back to Rochester, New York. And their stories were basically like they went to a college party and then they headed home. Peter immediately lawyers up, where he does do an interview with Dawn, and where Dawn states that he lied several times about his story. Um, it does, come to be that Peter does not have anything to do with it. But I could totally understand their frustration and at least answer the phone. And then it makes it even more bizarre to me, like that these people didn't say anything, but then also very hard because they're kind of being victimized, I guess, by the media, right? The media has no answers, and people want answers, and these are the last people to be seen with Brittany. Just like if you're married and your husband's, the first one to be looked at, these people are close or the last one to see you. So people started speculating because the police weren't being able to give answers or they didn't have answers. And so people, of course, we know, started speculating. And they came to their own conclusions and really did make it hard for these kids. And it's hard, right? I don't fault Dawn or Chad or anyone that loved Brittany if there was people that were with her and they were refusing to talk to me regardless of they feeling they need legal representation or whatever. I would feel a certain way. um, you almost don't care, you just want answers, right? So I do feel bad though, because obviously we're going to come to find out there's a resolution and an update in the case, a couple updates, but it was really hard for them. So at this point, Dawn's really not getting any answers. She's trying to call the friends. They're not speaking. Peter's lawyered up and he's given all different stories. So Chad and Dawn decide that they're going to come up with a plan. And they're like, let's deposit money into her bank cards and maybe she will use this money. But unfortunately, she never does use the money and the money just sits there and it didn't really do anything because they didn't get any answers. But it was a good idea, just to see if maybe Brittany was just running away from home life or problems, or just maybe going through something. And um, I know that there was even a like a sighting of another girl who someone reported, and they said that they thought it was Brittany. And so Chad's thought was, okay, you know what? Maybe it's her. It turns out not to be her. But then Chad started thinking, maybe she's just upset and she ran away. However, Dawn never wavered from the fact that she knew her daughter did not take off, and she fought really hard to get the answers, and they all did. It's just that I think Chad wanted to believe that his daughter was coming home, and I don't blame him. If you don't know, you don't know. So there's always a possibility that she's just ran off and she's hiding out, and maybe she hasn't even touched the money because maybe she doesn't want you to know where she's at. Um, it's very hard, and I think people can come to their own conclusions in their own heads and try to make peace with different things. So, however that looks for anybody involved, it's completely understandable. So, on April 26th, the volunteers started a search party, and this is where they end up checking that tip out and start a search on US 17. And this is with dogs, helicopters, horses, like ATVs, everything. And they also searched in the areas that were 7 miles from her last location or phone pings. And one phone ping went from 7 miles from where she was at from 927. And then by 11:58, her phone pinged more than 50 miles away. And so this was a huge search. Like, imagine that much land and brush. And this was like dense forested area. So this was very difficult for the searchers, let alone just the mass and size. Um, but Lieutenant Chuck Cap then announced that on the news that he was doing everything he could to find Brittany. And these next 5 months, like, this search would continue, and they found, and Brittany's 18th birthday would pass with no answers, and so sad. And this October of her birthday, they decided to do another search more in the area where her phone pinged. Now, seeing like a lot of the brush had died off, it's going into winter time, so a lot of this really dense forest is kind of like died out, and they can kind of see better what they're searching for. And nothing was found. And that December, a woman who was fishing along the Santee River ended up finding a pair of sunglasses. And I believe that she thought these were correlated to Brittany because there was a flyer out for Brittany with sunglasses on. And I guess to this lady who was fishing there, she really felt that these could be a lead, and she knew that there was a missing girl, and so she turned them over to police. And it was never confirmed to the public if these were a match for Brittany or not, so we're unsure what really came of the sunglasses. And when Dawn was asked about it in an interview, I believe she said she did not recognize the sunglasses. However, she didn't know if Brittany maybe purchased them while she was down in Myrtle Beach, so they were new and something that her mother did not know of. And following this, they decide to search that same area about a week later, and nothing again turns up. January, a month later, they go back, they search again at the Santee River, and they find nothing. And now, coming up on Brittany's 1 year anniversary in April, police release information stating that they have multiple persons of interest and a location of interest. And what they believe is that something took place with Brittany. And they stated that they did not feel that Brittany was alive at this time. And this is where we're going to introduce Timothy Sean Taylor, who would become a huge player in this case. And in July of 2010, Timothy Sean Taylor starts coming onto police radar. And this is because another woman was attempted abduction. Basically, he attempted to abduct her, and she ends up naming him, also saying he assaulted her, and he is charged with first degree kidnapping and first degree assault for the battery of his role. And in November, these charges are dropped, and this is because Timothy was seen on surveillance footage somewhere else. And what's crazy, like, so Timothy gets off with this um because surveillance footage put him somewhere else. And I don't know, like, why was he ever named or picked or the situation there. Um, but what's crazy about this is that Timothy has a brother, and this brother is Randall, and he would actually get charged with similar acts. Randall was charged in a 1999 connection to the murder of Shannon McConaughey, and her car was found abandoned and burned, and Shannon murdered. Her body was found in McCullenville, where Brittany's phone, last known, pinged. And at this point, Randall ends up getting arrested with four other men in this connection to this Shannon that was murdered. And for whatever reason, well, insufficient evidence. I don't know what evidence they had, or just not enough at all. But I just find it crazy that they're both charged with these kind of acts and then let off. Um, but again, this is all my opinion, and they were not charged. The charges were dropped for both of them, so they are innocent of those. One of the men, though, in the group of four of Randall, Timothy's brother, that allegedly committed the assault was a man named Harry Rivers, and he was actually sentenced to 15 years in jail for sexual abuse to a minor in 2012. So, yeah, I mean, again, he was let off because of not insufficient evidence, and look what he turned to go to do. So, was it really a stretch to say that he actually had committed a murder or an assault or anything? I don't know. If you're going to hurt a child, I don't put it past you to hurt a 19-year-old. But with these revelations and police kind of coming to some kind of connection with Timothy coming up on the radar, they get a search warrant. They search Timothy's home. They don't find anything, but in the search warrant, they also include a search warrant for his truck, where they end up running and finding out it's stolen. So, yeah, Timothy isn't on the up and up. And this will come into play later because there's very mixed opinions on Timothy. We'll kind of get through it more as the story progresses, and we can see why there's such this mixed opinion on him. So now at this point, after doing the search there at Timothy's, they don't find anything. And Raymond Moody ends up coming on the police radar now in the Sunset Lodge, where he is becoming a person of interest and the location of interest. And in 2011, they end up doing a search of the Sunset Lodge, where Raymond Moody was staying in apartment 22. And shortly after Brittany disappeared, he ends up moving out about 6 months later. And probably another reason why this dirtbag sticks out is because he's a level 3 sex offender. So, I mean, who are they going to go to for crimes like this against a young lady? Somebody like this, complete scumbag. Which I touch more on this later about how infuriating it is. I just want to stress it again that these sex offenders are allowed to be reformed and let back out into the world. I'm sorry. I feel like you could murder somebody and be reformed and go back out into the world over a sex offender. There's something mentally wrong with these people. And we just keep letting them out. And this is what happens. Absolutely just bad job on the Justice Department, bad job on the parole board. This man should have never, ever, ever got out of jail. Why we thought it was a good idea to release him back into society is insane. But that's the justice system for you. So now, you know, he is just let out to destroy more people's lives, to be a predator, to be someone that you get a flyer or a news article about or an alert on your phone who a sex offender is in the neighborhood, just more for you to have to worry about. Um, it's disgusting. Why we let these people back out to hurt the most vulnerable of our society is literally insane. But, he's out. So, level 3 sex offender. And the thing also that kind of stuck out to them was after this, Raymond Moody, like right after Brittany's disappearance, he's out in this area. And the day after, he is caught speeding in a Surfside area. And so, after this, too, another thing that sticks out to detectives is that Raymond Moody was pulled over in Surfside, which Brittany's phone was pinging through this area. And though, as they conduct the search on Raymond Moody's apartment, they end up taking multiple items of evidence, boxes, different things. Um, During this time, another body is also found. However, it's not Brittanee, and this is a 20-year-old man. So at this point, Dawn is feeling very defeated and ends up moving down to South Carolina so she can continue looking for her daughter. And at this time, she is getting weekly updates about what's going on. In 2016, FBI agent David Thomas led a press conference, stated that they believe Brittany was dead, even though they have found no body or suspects have been arrested. And they believe she was killed where her phone last pinged. Also, a $25,000 reward was offered in any information to Brittany's return or any answers to where they could find their daughter. And Dawn spoke, and she said she knew Brittany was gone and she just wants to bring her daughter home. And this part was so heartbreaking because at some point when Dawn is speaking, Chad, kind of says behind her his thoughts and feelings. And but it's very difficult and you can just feel their pain and she's tired. They're tired. It's been a long road for them and I don't blame them. They're breaking down and it's really rough for them. No answers, living this day in, day out, uprooting your family. She has other kids, um, in an area you don't know with people who probably won't help you, out on the street who just see your daughter missing and don't help. And then you have amazing people who take their time out and help you search. So it's just a very hard world to be thrown in, I'm sure. And so now with this press conference, they get a new tip, and this tip comes from an inmate named Taquan Brown. And he was currently in the McCormick Corrections Facility. And Taquan was in there for 20 years on a manslaughter charge. He comes forward and says that he's seen Timothy Deshawn Taylor at a stash house in McClellanville that he arrived to on about April 27th. And he witnessed Brittanee there being tortured, being raped by multiple men. He says that he did not know it was the missing girl until he seen the news thing. And this is why, now he knows and he's coming forward. And he said that he went back again to give Timothy's father money. And when he did, he then seen Brittanee again. And at this point, Taquan was standing outside with Timothy's father, and he seen Brittanee like take off running out of the house. And at this point, I guess 4 men came, chased her down with a gun. He says he hears gunshots, and then he sees um, the men carrying her out in a rug where she was dumped in an alligator pit. And this is what he then comes up to a story. And so now Brittany's parents are getting this same kind of information filtered through, and they start believing that Timothy had something to do with it. And so with this story, it's kind of overlaps into something Timothy gets involved in 2011, because he will plead guilty to a robbery in this time period of when Brittanee is missing. And he would receive an 18-month sentence. And the federal government, they weren't happy with this because they still didn't have Brittanee or any information. So they wanted to kind of put more pressure on him. So they were asking for more time for him because the punishment was too light. And I guess this is because he kind of like cooperated, or he wasn't the driver. He didn't have a main part in it, something like that. And was cooperative. I mean, he was caught, but whatever. And this is where I say I'm going to have some questionable thoughts on Timothy Deshawn Taylor. Because as this pressure kind of builds on Timothy, and he goes and does these like little interviews, and he talks about Brittanee, and his mother decides that she is going to campaign for the misinformation and injustice done to her son. Okay, you're right. So, well, just let it be known, right? Um, Timothy kind of filters through, and we now know that it's not Timothy, right? Okay, I'm just gonna let it out there. Um, but her going on this media thing to try to make her son seem like this church going innocent, being railroaded by the justice system. And I get it. Murder is serious. And if your son didn't do it and the police are trying to pin something on him, okay. But we have to be honest with ourselves and say that if your son's hanging out at stash houses and your son is involved in robberies, I would say that you stating that he's 16 and went to church and had a bedtime, didn't do any of this, and he's just a church going sweet kid. He was wrapped up with a lot of stuff, serious stuff at a young age. And your son pled guilty to those crimes. And again, it's not murder. And I understand. And he did not do it. And it's unfortunate now that he has to live with this kind of cloud of suspicion, even still now. However, Are we shocked that the police or your son's name got implicated into this? And I would hope that going forward, that your son would use this as a learning experience and not surround himself with people like this and make better decisions, because he doesn't get brought up in this, but he's at stash houses and his brother's involved in crime, his dad's supposedly involved in crime, and I just don't think it's a railroaded thing. I think, are they going to go to the regular guy down the street who goes to the 9 to 5? I'm not saying he could be crazy too. Literally, you never know anymore. I'm just saying, are we going to think it's the regular guy on the block, or are we going to think it's possibly the guy who's in trouble for robbery and other crimes, has been brought in as a person of interest, charged? Then yes, he was acquitted because of this. But I mean, I don't know. Normal people don't get themselves wrapped up in that kind of stuff. If people are doing bad things, this is what happens when you surround yourself with these kind of people. And I don't think that these were church people. I'm not saying he didn't go to church, and I'm not saying he wasn't. I'm just going to stop now. I just get very frustrated because this isn't a railroading thing. People wanted answers. Your son's name came to the forefront. Listen, it's just unfortunate that, yes, he has to live with this cloud of suspicion. However, he did not do it, and there's evidence to prove that he did not do it. So he has a way to exonerate himself, even in the eyes of the media, and maybe turn this into a better opportunity and a learning lesson for his future life, children, and potential partner. Just saying. And so, kind of after Timothy's mother goes on this campaign to clear his name and to make him sound like he's the sweetest boy ever, we have Chad Drexel. And you have to remember, at this point, they're under the assumption that Timothy knows something. So Chad Drexel decides he's going to now get on social media and um, say how he feels. And I've seen where some people believe that Chad was in the wrong for this because he kind of put it out to the media about Timothy. However, the police also said about Timothy and Chad being a parent, if I think someone's done something to my child, I'm most certainly going to go on a public platform and speak what I want to say. Also, when I have the police or his private investigators or somebody else kind of backing what you're feeling, you're desperate for information, your emotions are high, and I don't think anybody should fault Chad for anything that he did. It's not a great move now looking at it. However, this whole thing was very hard, and I'm sure they were just, again, looking for answers and trying to tell their side and make people understand why they felt the way that they did. And I'm sure they really believed what they believed when they were fighting for. I don't think that they were trying to tarnish Timothy's reputation. I don't think that they were trying to pin something on somebody who didn't do it. I think that Chad and Dawn, I think they all truly believe this. And so I think this is why they were so passionate about it. And so with that um, campaign that Timothy's mom has done now on the media, Chad now releases his own post. And I will read it as he wrote it. Quote, I would like to set the record straight with a strong reply to Joanne Taylor. Comment to the Post Courier in South Carolina this past Friday. Based on the evidence the FBI and the Myrtle Beach Police Department has gathered, along with facts and specific information gathered from a team of private investigators that I hired to work with the local law enforcement actively during this case, which will soon come to light. which will soon come too late. We have no doubt Timothy Deshawn Taylor played a significant role in the abduction and murder of my daughter. Of course, the mother of Timothy Deshawn Taylor is going to defend her son. As a father, I can understand. They need to defend the need to defend your children. What I don't understand is defending your children when you must know the truth. Her assumptions and words stated have been verified and correct. It could be further from the truth. We know Timothy Deshawn Taylor was witnessed by others, witnesses not in jail. With my daughter, we are praying that they do the right thing and they step forward with what they know. Additionally, he has been seen and followed to the exact area where my daughter's DNA was found. Joanne Taylor claimed that the FBI and government are falsely accusing her son of witnesses in jail. Falsely accusing her son. While we have specific evidence that I cannot disclose at this time for the safety of my daughter's case, which corroborates these testimonies, Timothy Deshawn Taylor is known to be involved in dog fighting, bringing drugs to parties, raping women, mostly Caucasian young women. Either picks up unwillingly or friends of friends that end up being drugged and taken there. This is the beginning. There is a ton more evidence and horrible info we would like the public in that area to be aware of their safety, but we are unable to disclose at this time. Without a doubt, Timothy Deshawn Taylor is a suspect in my daughter's disappearance and murder my family, and I will be following the FBI's request to keep specific details in my daughter's case under wrap until this horrible piece of trash goes to prison for life. After the guilty verdict, we will be happy to dispel these fairy tales that are being spun by Timothy's family. It is disgraceful the way this family and their friends are supporting and claiming innocence of a proven felon without even looking at evidence presented in the facts surrounding the case. Also adding this piece of trash photos so everyone can see who he is. End quote. And after this, Dawn and Chad went on Dr. Phil to try to get awareness out and try to find Brittanee, right? The more eyes, the more they can go on national television. That's wonderful. A lot of people watch Dr. Phil anyway to get exposure, right? So this is where Dawn and Chad did an interview. And Chad stated that at some point when he was handing out flyers for his daughter, he passed one out to who he said he knew was Deshawn Taylor. And he said that he was with friends in a car. And when Chad gave him the missing persons flyer, they crumbled up, laughed at him, and threw it out at him. And he said that he noticed that the driver had a missing left arm. And at some point when Timothy was younger, he had, I don't know if it was an accident or born, I think maybe an accident. He had no left arm. So it stuck out to Chad and he remembered. And later on, through his own private investigators, this, I guess, was verified. Again, this is what Chad is stating on Dr. Phil. And they feel pretty confident that, yes, that was Timothy that he ran into that day. And again, if Timothy's this sweet child and he has nothing to do with his disappearance, but people are assuming him of it, why would you go rip a flyer and throw it at her dad? Why would you do that anyways? I'm just saying that's not very church-like of you. And now that they try to investigate to see if Timothy actually had something to do with Brittanee's disappearance, they interview Taquan again. And this is to get, again, another story, run through it, and see if there's any inconsistencies. And of course there is. So Taquan, his story now switches to he seen Brittanee at his cousin Herman's house. He says that he went to his cousin Herman's trailer to show him a new truck. And I guess that at this point he witnessed Brittanee there being like tied to a chair and men abusing her there as well. He says that then he followed his cousin Herman out to the backyard where they led Brittanee and shot her twice with a shotgun. They then dumped her into an alligator pond. So now with the different versions, in 2019, the FBI conduct a search of Herman's trailer, and they find no evidence that Brittany was ever there. And they can't even interview Herman because conveniently he died of a heart attack. Also, um, Taquan, sorry, I drew a blank there. Taquan implicated like two other people in this story. And these two other people, one was actually murdered, I believe, in 2016. And the other one they were never able to find. Um, it sounds like Taquan was just trying to get time off his sentence. And that's, again, why I say it's unfortunate for Timothy because Timothy got drug into something. But if you hang around these kind of scumbags, that's what happens. Um, so, with all this media coverage kind of going on, um, they kind of shift their focus back over to Raymond Moody, and this is where people start trying to conduct their own kind of detective work as well. And so, with Raymond Moody coming on the radar, they start trying to form a connection between him and this unsolved case of a woman named Crystal Souls, a 28-year-old mother of a little boy. And Crystal went to the store. I guess she got, and I guess at this point she called her dad and she wanted a ride home. However, her dad was sick in bed with cancer and her mom was not there. So I guess she was like, you know what, it's okay. I can make it. It's a short walk and I'm sure she's done it before. So Crystal set off to go back home and unfortunately she'd never made it home. And a lot of people would speculate too as why Crystal didn't come home because she was a drug addict and she would kind of do this where she would take off for days and then come back home. So really nobody was alarmed at first. Um, she was just struggling with an addiction and being a single mom and I guess working, staying at home with her parents. So his grandparents, her little boy's grandparents, her parents, kind of just raised her son not to really know that, right? Um, but he does come out, and I see an interview where he speaks about her, and he really, really loved her, and he said she was an amazing mom, and he never knew she had a drug addiction. It was something that was hid from him. So people were trying to see, was Raymond Moody responsible for Crystal's death, or was this something drug related, or did she just run off? And yes, it's never been correlated to Raymond, I guess, enough to prosecute him. Um, but it is worth noting that in that year, Raymond did move back to the area where Crystal was at. And again, this could be where Crystal just was kind of dabbling with the wrong people and she just got herself caught up in something that she wasn't prepared for that night. Maybe somebody abducted her off the road, seeing her walking home. Maybe it was Raymond Moody. Um, but as of right now, there is no evidence to link the two. I think it's great that the police are going down all avenues and, trying to figure out who Raymond Moody is and what he's capable of. And if there's any connections to, even if it's not Raymond Moody, if there's connections to her disappearance, I think trying to figure this all out with only being a few years difference is a good idea. And so now that they couldn't find any of these ties to Raymond Moody and Crystal, March 2017 comes, and another search was done for Brittanee off Firefox Court, and it's a property that is approximately 7 miles from the Sunset Lodge. And this is where Raymond Moody was living, remember, in apartment 22. And police were out there with machines, shovels, and looking for any kinds of evidence that they could try to obtain. And a few years would go by. Like after this search, nothing was found. And then a few years would go by. And what's insane is that, I mean, it just out of kind of like nowhere, um, police end up announcing that they made an arrest. And this is for Raymond Moody. And the charges are going to be kidnapping, murder, criminal sexual conduct, third degree. And they believed that Raymond committed these acts on Saturday, April 25th. And due to the work of the investigators, they found a property that they believed he had buried Brittanee at. And I believe he buried them on April 26th, and then the human remains were found there on May 11th, 2022. So from 2009 to 2022, and finally they had an arrest in the case. And it was not Timothy, and that's why I said, it wasn't Timothy, and that's really unfortunate. Um, but it was Raymond Moody, and so they were right to suspect him of it. And um, these remains were recovered by the FBI response team. They were transferred to Georgetown's coroner, where Brittanee was positively identified through dental records. Also, DNA confirmed it to be Brittanee. And I guess they found her, right? Which brings her back home to her parents. But again, let's go back to the fact that this disgusting piece of shit should not have been walking the streets. And now Brittanee is gone because, I'm just blown away that this did not need to happen. Like, this wasn't just, he should have been in prison. This was not somebody that abducted her with no record or that didn't have anything um, eligible to keep him behind bars. Raymond Moody should have rotted in prison. And now some poor girl lost her life because of him. So Raymond was already in jail on obstruction charges, and this was related to that traffic pullover in Surfside, where they believed that Brittanee was already deceased at that time, where they had made contact with him, right? So the Surfside Georgetown coroner Chase Ridgway said, "quote, due to the condition of her remains, manual strangulation could not be confirmed," unquote. And this was in response to the media kind of running with the story that Brittanee had been strangled. But the coroner did come out and say that they were able to confirm it was Brittany's body, but again, that they were not able to confirm it was manual strangulation. So that was, I guess, a misreported thing in the media. I'm not really sure where that came from. They believed that she was raped and murdered at Santee River and then moved to Old Town Avenue, where her remains were found. And it was about 2.5 miles from the Sunset Lodge. And Jimmy Richardson, 15th Circuit Solicitor, the man that was responsible to put this case together, if it goes to trial, he claims the investigation has collected over 100 boxes of evidence. And depending on Raymond Moody's response to the charges, it will either create a guilty plea or they will begin putting a trial together. And here, Richard is speaking about some of the evidence that we may have never heard from if this goes to trial. And with this, the news coverage is that with this arrest, they kind of released a little bit more information about how Raymond Moody's vehicle was seen on surveillance camera in the area of where Brittanee went missing. And that, again, they believe that she already was deceased prior to his pullover in Surfside. So after Raymond's arrested on these charges, he pleads guilty and he receives life. And this story just gets even grosser because the update we have today is that not only Raymond Moody in this story is the most disgusting piece of shit, we have Angel Cooper Voss, his longtime girlfriend, wife, whatever she may be, mother to his children, I believe, whatever, it may be. Well, Angel was arrested, and this just comes out just about a week ago that she was arrested for lying to the FBI. Now, Dawn, Brittany's mother, is going to the Myrtle Beach, South Carolina police department because she feels Angel should be charged for kidnapping and the murder, the kidnapping, and at minimal, right? The kidnapping. Um, and I don't blame her because it comes out that Angel was a willing participant in helping Raymond abduct Brittany. And that's because when Raymond approached Brittany that night that she was walking home or walking back to her motel to bring back her from the shorts, Angel was in the car. And as a young girl, um, you would trust that a man and his wife would probably be safe. I wouldn't get into the car with anybody nowadays. However, she felt safe, and I don't blame her. So Angel lured her into the vehicle. And then when they were at the Santee River or at the spot they were with her, they claimed that they were partying and doing drugs and doing this and doing that. And at that point, she decided she was going to take Brittany's phone. Now, Angel Voss is a dumb bitch. And I'll tell you why. Because not only did Angel Voss, whatever the fuck her name is, not only did she help with this, she knew about his past. She knew he was a sex offender. I mean, I guess not only, I mean, again, insane. Um, she knew that he, she claims that she didn't know in the beginning, but then somebody told her, but then he was such a great man, that it wasn't a deal breaker for her. Oh boy. And I'm pretty sure that somewhere Angel and Raymond have children, which is even more sick because you're a mother. But whatever. Angel ends up staying with this piece of shit, and then not only just stays with him, thinking he's going to change, which he's not going to. And my stance on sex offenders is they don't change. Um, she then helps lure another girl, an innocent girl. Like, what the hell is wrong with you? Absolutely disgusting. So sick. Like, she's helping Raymond with his fantasies. And it makes you wonder if there's not more victims out there of these two. I know back a while ago, I watched a case. I can't remember the names or very many of the details, but the main thing that stuck out to me was that it was a couple who was abducting and raping women, and all under the guise of a woman being in the car being trusting. And that's why I will not get in the car with anybody because of that actual show or documentary. And I can't remember where I seen it at. But basically, they would abduct them together. And this woman was there to make these girls feel safe and was just as evil as the male doing this. Like, she took Brittany's phone. What did you think was going to happen? Um, the fact that she only got 18 years and she'll be out when she's, I believe, 75 is disgusting. And I'm so glad that Dawn is going to the police station and going to advocate for charges because she did kidnap Brittany. She was in the vehicle. She was used as the bait, so called, to say, because Brittany, I don't think would have gotten in the car with this dirtbag. Like, he is disgusting. So I just don't think that she would get in with this older, balding look. I don't. I think the fact that the wife was in the car gave Brittany a false sense of security. And the fact that you let your disgusting old ass boyfriend do that to somebody is, she deserves the rest of her life in prison. Personally, I think they should both get the death penalty. But, that's my opinion. You may not agree with this. You might, just like you may not agree with my opinion on Timothy. I just know that this was a horrible situation for the victims. And victims, I say because yes, Timothy was victimized as far as like he's not a murderer, right? As far as we know. So very rough. Um, and the most important people in this story, obviously, is Brittany and Chad and Dawn and her biological father and her sisters and brother. I just can't even imagine what Dawn goes through every day and what they all go through, but especially a mother, it's very hard. And as I cover these cases or listen to these cases, I've liked true crime for a very long time. Um, but every time you hear them and you just, being a mother myself, you think, I don't know how she does it. I don't know how she finds it every day to wake up and be a mother still to her other kids. Um, Good for her for fighting so hard. Her husband's ex-husband, I'm sorry. Um, and just good job for not giving up. And I know it took a long time, but if it wasn't for them, who knows, right? There is another update on this case. And sorry, this is just, it's like makes me sick because it's very, very, very sad. And I just cannot imagine how terrified Brittany was. Like, she was so tiny and you're in a strange place. You don't know where you're at. You have no phone. You're up against, I mean, this guy was pretty jacked. I mean, he was like living in prison for how long? And he was a big guy. And besides the point, when, when they want what they want, they usually act even more crazy. So I just, like, I can't get her out of my mind. Um, Very, very sad. So, with that, let's go ahead and give the last update to this case, which I could find most recent, and that is that Dawn actually won her civil suit, and a jury has awarded her $700 million, which is amazing. And this isn't amazing because of the actual money. This is amazing because the accountability that's being held, and kind of like the precedents, like, we're not going to take this. And yes, she probably will never get a dime from Raymond Moody. But she sued him and it's just on principle alone. And that way, if Raymond Moody ever thinks that for whatever reason he's going to get a cent and ever keep it, he's not, because $700 million, I don't even remember his age, and he didn't really have much. So yes, she's never going to see any of that money. But I think, again, it was just something to, another piece to her journey, right? So we're going to end it here. And thank you for listening and watching. And I hope that you made it to the end. And if you did, please like, subscribe, leave a comment. And again, we just want to say we're very sorry and our hearts go out to you, Dawn, Chad, and all of Brittany's family.